We have a problem, Batman. Gotham needs you again.
The Punisher is justice without mercy, a man who decided that the legal system failed him so completely that murder became his preferred form of law enforcement. Frank Castle operates from the simple philosophy that some people don't deserve rehabilitation, second chances, or due process. They deserve bullets. The contingency protocol must account for someone who possesses military-grade combat training, unlimited resources for acquiring weapons, and the complete absence of moral restraint when it comes to killing criminals. His greatest weapon isn't his arsenal, but his absolute certainty that his methods work better than traditional justice, making him willing to execute anyone he perceives as deserving death regardless of legal considerations or collateral damage. The plan must address a vigilante who has crossed every line I refuse to cross, while maintaining that his way produces better results for innocent people. Combat expertise makes direct confrontation extremely hazardous, as Castle possesses extensive military training in weapons, tactics, demolitions, and urban warfare that rivals any special forces operator. His experience includes multiple combat deployments, advanced sniper training, and expertise with every type of firearm and explosive device currently available. Unlike most criminals, he approaches each situation with professional military planning, comprehensive intelligence gathering, and backup contingencies that account for law enforcement response. His pain tolerance and injury management come from battlefield experience where failure meant death, making him capable of continuing operations even when seriously wounded. The strategy requires understanding that fighting the Punisher means fighting someone with equivalent tactical training, but without the moral limitations that prevent lethal force, requiring superior positioning and equipment rather than superior skills. Moral code provides both his greatest strength and most exploitable weakness, as his war against crime operates according to strict rules that can be predicted and potentially manipulated. Castle only targets individuals he considers genuinely guilty of serious crimes, showing particular focus on murderers, drug dealers, human traffickers, and organized crime figures. His definition of justice doesn't include petty criminals, white-collar offenders, or people who might be capable of rehabilitation through legal channels. The approach involves understanding his target selection criteria and either protecting potential victims who don't meet his standards, or using those standards to predict his movements and intercept him before he can strike. When his moral code becomes a tactical limitation that prevents him from adapting to changing circumstances, his effectiveness decreases while his predictability increases. What do you think, Alfred?
Master, Frank Castle represents what you might have become if you had chosen a different path after your parents' deaths, someone who decided that preventing future victims justified becoming what criminals fear most. His methods are undeniably effective in the short term. The criminals he eliminates will never hurt anyone again. However, his approach creates a society where justice depends on one man's judgment rather than democratic institutions, where the difference between criminal and victim becomes a matter of personal opinion rather than legal process. Perhaps the most troubling aspect is that he might be partially right about the limitations of traditional justice, but being right doesn't justify abandoning the principles that separate civilization from vigilantism.
Alfred's comparison hits uncomfortably close to home, but he's missing the crucial difference. I chose to become a symbol that inspires people to be better, while Castle chose to become a symbol that terrifies people into compliance. His methods might reduce crime through fear, but they also reduce society's faith in justice, law, and the possibility of redemption. The strategy focuses on proving that my approach produces better long-term results than his execution-based system, demonstrating that rehabilitation and legal justice create lasting change while his killings only create temporary fear. When criminals fear punishment more than they value reform, society becomes safer but also less free. What do you think, Robin?
When someone gets so angry about injustice that they decide to become the judge, jury, and executioner all rolled into one person, he's not crazy or evil. He genuinely thinks he's helping people by killing bad guys. But here's the thing. Once you start deciding who deserves to live or die based on your own personal rules, where does it stop? Today, it's murderers and drug dealers, but tomorrow it might be someone who just reminds him of the people who killed his family. The scariest part isn't that he's wrong, it's that he's partially right about some criminals never changing.
Robin's observation about the slippery slope of personal justice reveals Castle's fundamental flaw. His system works only as long as his judgment remains sound, but trauma and isolation gradually erode anyone's ability to make objective moral decisions. The strategy must exploit this psychological vulnerability by creating situations where his black and white worldview encounters moral complexity that challenges his simple solutions. This involves presenting him with criminals who are also victims, situations where killing would harm innocence, and scenarios where mercy produces better outcomes than execution. When his rigid moral system encounters real-world complexity, his confidence in his methods begins to crack and alternative approaches become possible. Resource disruption targets his impressive arsenal and support network, recognizing that his one-man war requires significant logistical support that can be identified and eliminated. Castle maintains weapon caches throughout the city, relies on black market suppliers for ammunition and explosives, and uses various legitimate and illegitimate income sources to fund his operations. His military background provides him with contacts who supply intelligence, equipment, and safe houses when needed. The strategy involves systematic identification and removal of these support systems, forcing him to operate with limited resources and reduced intelligence about his targets. This includes monitoring black market weapons dealers, tracking unusual ammunition purchases, and investigating military surplus sales that might be supplying his arsenal. When his operational capacity becomes limited by resource constraints, his effectiveness decreases and his exposure to law enforcement increases. Psychological pressure exploits his unresolved trauma and guilt over his family's death, understanding that his war on crime is actually a war against his own failure to protect the people he loved most. His obsessive dedication to eliminating criminals stems from his inability to accept that some tragedies can't be prevented or avenged, that his family's death was a random act of violence, rather than a failure of justice that he can somehow correct retroactively. The approach involves forcing him to confront the futility of his mission, the impossibility of killing enough criminals to balance the scales, and the fact that his family wouldn't want their deaths to justify his transformation into a killer. When his mission becomes obviously impossible rather than merely difficult, his motivation begins to weaken and alternative paths become attractive. Intelligence warfare focuses on disrupting his information-gathering capabilities and feeding him false intelligence that leads to tactical mistakes or moral conflicts. Castle's effectiveness depends on accurate intelligence about criminal activities, police operations, and potential targets' guilt or innocence. His sources include corrupt police officers, criminal informants, surveillance technology, and military contacts who provide classified information. The strategy involves identifying and neutralizing these intelligence sources while providing false information that leads him away from actual criminal activities or toward targets who don't meet his moral criteria. This includes feeding him information about criminals who are actually undercover police officers, providing false evidence of criminal activity among innocent people, and creating scenarios where acting on his intelligence would obviously harm the people he's trying to protect. When his intelligence becomes unreliable, his moral certainty decreases and his tactical effectiveness suffers.